morning, everybody. Boker Tov. When I was head of marketing at an internet security startup in the United States, we were surprised to learn that some of our target market IT directors were getting together for beers about once a month to talk amongst themselves. So one of our sales guys said, you know, I like beer, got himself invited, came back with a list of forums that these guys are participating in, events that they like to go to, and most importantly, a really great journal that we hadn't really had a chance to target yet. Well, armed with this information, we targeted that specific publication, got coverage, and it generated hundreds of qualified inbound leads over the coming months. Why am I telling you this story? It's about influencer marketing. Marketing to influencers is one of the best ways for you to impact your business, especially if it's handled strategically. How do you handle that strategically? First of all, you probably are all aware that there's a lot of noise in the market. You're doing a lot of webinars, a lot of email campaigns, going to trade shows, and so forth. It's hard to get your message heard over your competitors. Well, influencer marketing cuts right through that noise. Your buyer doesn't have to figure out, well, do I listen to this guy or do I listen to that guy? Do I open this email? Do I open that email? The influencer is basically like whispering right into the person's ear who they should be talking to. So that's only one of many reasons why influencer marketing, and that means talking to journalists, analysts, consultants, buyers groups, and so forth, can help your marketing program. As a former VP marketing myself and now a marketing consultant, there are so many subjects that we can talk about B2B marketing, but this I felt is one of the key things that you need to leave here today in your toolbox. So how do you do that strategically? First of all, as marketers, you know you need to target your target market. Oftentimes, your target market has multiple segments, or multiple personas within it. I've been in situations where I've been targeting everybody from the CIO down to the IT director. The CIO is reading different publications and talking to different people than the IT director. Business Week as opposed to E-Week, as an example. You also need to determine where along the buying cycle you most need to influence. So the chart in the slide shows all the different types of influencers all along the buying cycle. In the early part of the cycle, when your buyer, your decision maker, may not even realize they have a pain, the journalists can play an instrumental role in bringing that pain to light and making them aware that this is something they need to deal with. Later on in the buying cycle, when they know they have a pain and they want to decide whose product do they want to buy, whose service do they need, that's when they may turn to analysts who will help them to develop their short list. So these are two axes upon which you need to build your influencer program. Once you know that you need to do it and who you want to target, you need to start building your list. But unfortunately, as you notice walking around here, the influencers don't exactly run around with a sign on their back or on their business card saying, I'm an influencer. So you need to do research. The best research is done over beers with your customers. Even without the beer, you need to talk to your customers. Every time you're at an event, every time you work with a customer on a case study, if you ride along on a sales call, make sure that these questions are on your agenda. What forums are you participating in? Who's influencing your decisions? What analysts are you talking to? Who is the person that you would most ask about this question? You may be surprised by the answers. Now, of course, you should also ask your salespeople and ask your executives and ask them to ask the customers, because in many companies I've seen, the salespeople and executives are much more in contact with the customers on a day-to-day basis than the marketing people, unfortunately. Although you can also manufacture opportunities to be in touch with customers directly. Besides the primary research of asking your customers, and you can also speak with analysts and journalists that are in your industry, you can also do secondary research, looking at conference schedules, who's speaking at the conference, who are academics, who are doing research in your area. These are all well-known influencers. In terms of conferences, sometimes the organizer of the conference, Batchen, is a huge influencer. But this all should be corroborated by your customers. You can also purchase lists, by the way. A lot of PR companies turn to a company called Cision to buy lists of journalists. But then you're going to end up with a list of about thousands of different journalists that are key influencers. Not all of them are. Case in point, I had a situation where there was a specific influencer that I noticed that my PR company hadn't been able to target. So I asked them, what's with this guy? Why can't we reach him? And then when they sent me the Excel spreadsheet of all of our entire target list, I said, well, that's why they're number 223. It's very difficult to maintain contact with hundreds of influencers. You really need to focus, just like 5 goals. You need maybe 50 influencers that you can keep in touch with. And by the way, once I pointed out to her that this was one of our target influencers, within a week, she'd gotten him on the phone. It was just a question of making sure that I was involved and not just leaving it to my outsourced person. Notice I didn't say, look at their clout scores, look at their Twitter followers, and so forth. I'm not saying ignore it. You can use the social media as a way of maintaining relationships with your influencers, because a lot of these offline guys are now tweeting and blogging, and they're all on LinkedIn and so forth. I've got journalists that I'm still in touch with on Facebook. But as the cost of your service or product goes up, the offline influence also increases, okay? This is based on research by a company called Influencer 50. I agree in terms of my experience. If you're selling something that's in the tens of thousands of dollars or higher, you really need to make sure that you're looking at the offline influencers. You also need to tailor your approach to each influencer. Once you've got your list, it's not enough to do a one-size-fits-all email blast to all of the people that you want to influence. Case in point, I needed to reach out to a specific blogger. Before I did it, believe me, I read all of his blog posts, and he writes on 3 different blogs. I followed his Twitter feed, took a look at what he was doing, knew that he'd been in the hospital recently. By the time I spoke with the guy, I practically knew the names of his children. So I was really able to tailor my approach to what he was going to need. And you need to do that for each and every one, and that's why you need to focus your list. Build yourself a schedule, maintain some flexibility within the schedule, of course, but try to match your influencer schedule with your PR schedule and your event schedule and so forth. Make sure that you're either meeting with or speaking with people on a regular basis, and you can ask them, when you talk to them, how would you like me to maintain contact with you? Is a monthly email okay with you? Can we call you on a quarterly basis? Would you be open to meeting our CEO for dinner when he's traveling in your area? Make sure that you know your executive travel schedule so that when they are in the relevant location, they can meet with a relevant influencer. And if you can bring a customer along for the ride, even better. Things that you can provide to the influencers throughout this building of the relationship, if you can bring them value, then they're going to continue coming back to you. So, for example, sharing your product roadmap. This is something of value, particularly for an analyst. An industry-oriented slide or an infographic. I was at a Gartner conference a couple of years ago, and in the slide deck for one of the presentations by one of the analysts was a vendor slide. Amazing. Imagine if you could get that into one of an analyst presentation. Content. Sometimes an analyst or a journalist is just looking for a bit of content. I had a situation where I was in touch with an editor for a long-term project, and suddenly I get an email from him saying, how quickly can you get that to me? Picked up the phone, and he said, and I said, so what's your deadline? Suddenly it sounded very urgent from the email. And he said, well, I've got this newsletter going out today. It would be great if we could include something about your subject. I said, okay, searched in my brain for a minute, realized that we had a couple of blog posts that we hadn't yet published, ran one of the ideas by him. He said, it sounds really interesting. Let me take a look. Within an hour, he'd published it on his newsletter. Great for my client, because they got the bylined article. Great for him, because he got new content that he wasn't even necessarily counting on. And now we have a friend for life in this editor. Making sure your influencers can get together with each other and with your customers. Happy hours, breakfasts, it's stuff that you're doing anyway. Just make sure to roll your influencers into it. Okay. And then the last slide, is sometimes it takes time. Sometimes you can turn something around in an hour, sometimes it takes years. This is an example from a startup company where I was head of marketing, where we were basically trying to we needed to penetrate the Fortune 1000. And the only way to do that in an IT, if you're selling to IT for the enterprise, is through Gartner. Not the only, it's one of the key ways to do it. So our influencer program, we started, that says year 0, by the way. It's hard to read the green. Year 0, we started outreach to Gartner. By year 1, we'd gotten our first mentions in the Gartner publications, but we weren't on the Magic Quadrant, unfortunately. By year 2, open the champagne. We're on the quadrant, in the niche quadrant. By the way, all this time, we're briefing the analysts, meeting with them at events, having our customers call them, having our prospects call them. By year 3, still in niche, but closer to visionary. By year 4, we were in visionary. No more champagne. So it can take a lot of time. I mean, 4 years, if you think about it, it's a really long time, especially for Gen Flux, but sometimes you have to do it. To sum up, you need to approach your influencer marketing in the same organized way you do all your campaigns. Just like you prepare for a trade show or an email campaign or a webinar, put your influencer marketing, put the same hat on for your influencer marketing. Spend the time to do the research. It really pays off, believe me. Be human. We didn't talk about that too much, but it's important that they see you as another human being and not just a company. And be patient. So if you have any questions during the break, I'd be happy to speak with you about influencer marketing or any aspect of B2B marketing. And thank you very much for your time.